Hey, 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 this is the podcast that connects you with well-known and successful people in their chosen field and digs deep into their life story and their faith journey. It's the Amazing Greats podcast. Welcome to episode number 17 with me, Rick Hansen. How are you? It's my great privilege to talk with an exceptionally talented woman who helps to entertain and enlighten literally hundreds of thousands of people every day on the radio as the producer and co-host of the Brant Hansen Show. We talked to Brant a couple of weeks ago, and he shared just a little bit about her story, just enough so that we knew we had to get her on the show and talk about this God-inspired entertainer. Welcome. We're going to jump right into our conversation with Sherri Lynn.
Hey, my name's Brant, and Sherri is here. She's my producer. We have a radio program, and we invite you to listen to it. It's pretty good, I feel.
It's unique.
I feel that I think it's also excellent, quality-wise.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've illustrated our show for you to kind of explain how awesome it is.
Our radio show has lots of awesome stuff in it, like robots. We have robots on the show. I like robots. I like sci-fi. And aliens, like this alien.
Why does he only have one shoe on?
Not a shoe. That's a space boot.
Oh. Okay.
This whole show is a huge, epic adventure.
With Viking stuff?
With Viking stuff. It's the Brant Hansen Show with Brant and producer Sherri.
Brant, do you think those are the right colors? Because that doesn't really match my skin tone, so...
Well,
no.
how about this?
What, Brant? I don't even wear glasses.
I also play the accordion, and that's pretty awesome.
The crowd seems into it.
We have one simple goal for the radio program, and that goal is dominate Earth.
Show God's love to people.
Show God's love to people. And we welcome misfits. If you're someone who doesn't quite fit in with church culture, you're welcome here. If you don't fit in easily with the culture at large, well, we welcome you too.
We are a collection of oddballs, but we love it this way.
It's the Brant Hansen Show.
Well, this is indeed a pleasure. I have with us today on our Amazing Greats podcast, certainly an amazing, great person, and somebody that I've, fallen in love with as far as her great performance with Brant Hansen on the Brant Hansen Show. But you're a whole lot more than that. I mean, that was just kind of a part of what makes Sherri Lynn a Sherri Lynn. So you're a radio show host. You're a comedian, you're a playwright, you're an actress director yourself, you're an author, all of that. And how old are you? Like in your 30s or something?
No, I am 48, Rick.
Seriously?
I
wow.
am.
Well, all right. Yeah. So you hold your age well, and I would have guessed in the mid 30s, somewhere like
Thank
that.
you. I have wonderful genes from my mother. She holds her age well. So she's 75, but when people see her, they think she's in her 50s. So
okay.
I got that going for me.
You got some genes going. Yeah. So I am so excited because all of the things that you've done, I want to go through them one by one.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the radio show. We're going to talk about the podcast that you do with Brant Hansen. We're going to talk about your own playwriting and directing and acting and your authorship. So let's get started with the radio show. Okay. You are, let me just start out by saying, one of the best laughs on radio.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
It's so authentic, and it is so real, and it's so big, and it's bold, and you can't help but laugh along with you. So,
well, I appreciate that. I never really considered it or thought about it because it's very similar to everyone in my family. So we all laugh the same, which is why when we go to restaurants and things together, we always request a room to ourselves so as not to interrupt everyone else's enjoyment of their dinner. But it wasn't until I joined Brant that I even had an inkling about it. I never really considered it because I was always with my family and we all kind of sound the same.
Yeah. And then, how did you and Brant actually hook up? Where along the way did you run into each other and begin this journey?
I was working for a gospel network that was based out of Atlanta, but I was producing and writing in Pittsburgh, where I am from. And that just wasn't working out anymore. And I was kind of, in full disclosure, in all honesty, I was really tired of anything that was Christian media and wanted just
Really?
media. Yeah, just media, and because I felt like it was just a little more. I could be a little more. How to put it? I'm trying not to be negative here, but if it's just media, we can just talk about the money. We can talk about the objectives, the agenda. We don't have this intertwined thing of Christian business that can get a little murky, and I had gotten kind of tired of that, and so. Honestly, I was going to try to be in news. I was interviewing with a lot of different news outlets, and I saw a posting for a producer or content coordinator was the position for Brant Hansen. And I had never heard of Brant Hansen. It was at EMF Broadcasting. We were on Air One Network. I had never heard of that. I knew what K-Love was, but I didn't know what Air One was. I just had no clue. I had only been in gospel and urban my entire career, so I just knew nothing. But it looked like something I could do. And so I applied, and honestly, just kind of on a fluke. And they called me, and we just kept going back and forth, and I always make a joke, but it is real. I looked up the company, I looked up where they were, I looked up their history of diversity, and your podcast listeners may not know I'm an African American woman, and so I really thought there was no chance that I had no chance for the job there. I thought they were doing like a equal employment opportunity thing, just to say we tried, right? And so I never gave it a second thought. My whole career, since this podcast is about, I don't always tell this story, but I can tell it here. I never gave it a second thought. I had never moved out of Pittsburgh. My whole career was home, Pittsburgh family. I have a big family. They're very popular in the city of Pittsburgh in church culture. So I was very ingrained there. And I was interviewing for this job, Rick, and I never told my family because I didn't want that uproar, because I didn't believe it was a real thing, right? And Paul Goldsmith, who was the program director, continued to call me. We went back and forth, and then he stopped calling me for about a week and a half. And I thought, okay, well, there's that. You know what I mean? We went through the motions. And one day, my mother called me from her job. Now, she does not know I'm interviewing. She knows nothing about this. And she said, Sherri, I was reading the scripture about God enlarging your territory. She said, and I think that's what God's about to do for you. And I said, yeah, great, whatever, because I come from a charismatic family, right? So, we have prophecies about peanut butter, like everything is, God says so much all the time. So I was like, yeah, great. And she said, don't shrug this off. She said, I was reading it. She said, I couldn't finish it because someone came into my cubicle or whatever. She said, but I put my hand on it and I know that's what God is saying. And I said, okay. And then that night, it was a Wednesday evening was Bible study at my family's church. I was on my way into the bottom half of the church to go into Bible study, and my phone rang, and it was Paul Goldsmith from the job. And he said, can you please fly out here? They were outside of Sacramento. Can you fly here? And I hadn't heard from him for a week and a half. And so once I said yes, then my whole family's there at Bible study along with the rest of the church. Church is over, and I asked my family to stay. And I tell them, look, I've been interviewing for this job, and I didn't think it was real, but they're asking to fly me out there. I can't disappear for 3 days and nobody knows where I'm at. And I remember the look on my mom's face, because she was shocked, but not, and I said to her, you said it literally at like 2:33 this afternoon, you said it. And they knew, and I was making very little money, Rick, very, very little money. And my mom and my Nana, almost makes me want to cry, took me to Ross for Less and bought me a little business suit and a little purse so that I could look professional to go there.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how I got out there, and Brant and I really clicked immediately. It really was immediately. And I still had no clue what this was, though. You know what I mean? Like his popularity, who he was, what I didn't know. I didn't find that out until months into the job, and that was a baptism by fire.
So is that the first time you even met Brant? Was when you flew out there then, or had you had a conversation?
we had one Skype conversation where we clicked on that. And that was my first inkling, like, well, that did go well. Like and he says, if you ask him, he says he was intrigued because I seemed not to care during the interview. It was because I never thought it was real. So he was intrigued by, here's a person who's interviewing for this big job and she looks like she can care less. But I thought they're just doing this to go through some sort of motions. But we laughed, we had the same interests, we had the same kind of background. And when I say the same interests, like the same kind of, like we both love the Muppets, we both love cartoons, like weird things that adults should have long since given up. We both had that kind of interest, and that was my first inkling that, well, that actually worked. Like when we almost were kind of doing a show during the interview. And that was my first inkling. And then when I went out there, I was like, well, yeah, I can see myself with this guy. It took a little more convincing to get me to California, but I could see the connection.
Yeah. Wow. And then, the synergy that has created from all of that is amazing. My background's radio too. So I've been a program director of morning shows, and I've been involved in a partnership kind of morning show. And I know it's magic when two people can really connect like you guys do. It seems like you know what he's going to say, but when I talk to him, he says, we don't really know. We just kind of feel.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know anything. We don't. When we first started the show, we would have kind of, those show prep meetings. You know what that's about, when you're sitting down and both parties kind of bring something to the table of something they've been thinking about, kind of talk it through and what your position is.
Yeah.
We did that in the beginning, but that just didn't have an authentic feel for us. The authenticity really came from him kind of bringing the content to the table and my reaction in real time. And that's where we found more of a rhythm.
Yeah. And rhythm you have found, man. It really is great. So I love the show. The podcast is kind of bits and pieces of the show, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. Yes. I do that every day. So I produce the show every day. So that's really the heavy lifting on my end. Brant's is the content. And that's again, you're a radio guy, so you know that is a ton of content that he does every day. Like it is a lot of stuff, and it's deep stuff and funny stuff, but it's all well thought out. And so that's hours and hours and hours of prep for him.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that is the production side, which is my side. And so I'm very, I always say, neurotic about how the show is put together for the radio, and how it's delivered to our affiliates. And then after that, then I think through how it's put together on the podcast, which is a whole nother production process.
Yeah. And the podcast is called the Brant Hansen Oddcast, just so if people want to find that, that's where they would go, on wherever podcasts are available, pretty much, right?
Yep.
And as far as the radio show, 200 radio stations plus, all over the country. And there's a long laundry list of radio stations. I think it's listed on the Brant Hansen
on his website.
site.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So if somebody wants to find the show locally, they can do that, and you can always listen to it streaming too, which is a great way to find it as well. So, well, that's probably the cornerstone of what you do right now. But there's other things that you do. One of which is seems like it would be the scariest thing in the world, is to stand up in front of a crowd of people and make them laugh, right?
In my family, preaching is the family business. Everybody does it. And I wanted to do it like my grandpa, my grandma, my aunts, my uncles. I wanted to be a preacher. So they would let me speak. The problem is, when I talk like this all the time. And they would say, you did good, but you need some spirit. You need some fire. You need some anointing. And what I realized is that they meant the voice, that I didn't have the preacher voice. And I didn't know how to do it, so I used to practice it. And I used to practice it using Old MacDonald. And I would have like a hairbrush, and I'd be looking in the mirror, and I'd be like, Old MacDonald. Hey! A fall. I think you have to not be all the way there in the head, maybe a little off kilter, not as sane as normal people. And I think that, it's exhilarating to me. I love it. I mean, we just did a show where we wrote all new material, Brant and I, and it's the first show. And stand-up is not his main thing, right? I've done that for, quite a few years, but he has not. And so I know there is no substitute, Rick, for a first night. Like, you get out there. It doesn't matter how rip-roaring hilarious it was in your head. The audience will tell you immediately if that works or if it doesn't. And I love that process because that is very, there is no nuance there. They laughed or they did not laugh. And then that's that. And you can say, well, they didn't get it. Well, whose job is it for them to get it? You. So it's all back on you. So I enjoy that process. I do not enjoy bombing. I've done it quite a few times in my career because there's no way around it. But I love saying, okay, why didn't that work? Do you rewrite it? It's a whole process. And I think a lot of times people think, well, I'm funny. I can get up there on the mic and say some stuff. Well, you can. And I thought that, quite frankly, in the beginning, like, okay, I'm funny. I can get on here. I'm on the radio anyway. Okay, yeah. And I did it. And I tell the story because when I did it, it was in front of a radio audience. So it was an audience that already knew me.
Okay.
They knew me on the radio. They were invested. They came out to see me, right? And so they're already bought in. But when I went to do comedy in front of a cold audience, like an audience that did not know me, the bombing was worse than I don't think I've ever bombed that bad. Like, it was just literally like the Simpsons kind of big eyes, blink, blink, blink at you. It was in a church basement. I can't even remember what it was for. It was jam-packed in there. And it was awful. And I was so arrogant, Rick, so full of myself. And so, because I had killed, not too long ago in front of this radio audience. I'm amazing. I'm an amazing comedian. I'm an amazing radio host. There's no one on the earth better than me. And so I had friends with me, like a little entourage or something. And driving back from that gig in the car with the people who watched you bomb.
Were they trying
Ain't
to make
nothing like it, brother. Ain't nothing like it.
Were they trying to make you feel better, or were they like?
No, there was nothing to say. It was as quiet in that car as it was in that church basement. Like, what do you say to somebody who just made a complete and total fool of themselves on stage? Like, there's nothing to say. And I had a cassette tape. That tells you how long ago it was. I had a cassette tape of the night that I killed, and I made everybody listen to it on the way home. So I played it to remind everybody there was a time when I was funny. Tonight was not it, but I did have it. So that taught me, no, you have to write. You have to sit down. You have to write this out. There has to be a cadence of words. There has to be editing. There has to be a thought process on how you escalate this and how you pay it off. And I love that process, but I had to learn that process is necessary.
What a humbling experience that would be. And some people would walk away and say, I guess I don't want to do this after all.
No, that's where the craziness comes in when you're not quite sane.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And so do you have an opportunity to do stand-up on a regular basis now, or is that not as much?
Well, when we go on tour for the radio show and we go to different cities where we have affiliates, the show does encompass some comedy skits, and I do some stand-up for that. And then a lot of times affiliates will bring me in for a ladies' night out or something like that, and I'll usually do like maybe an hour's worth of material that I've developed. And so, yeah, I get to do it fairly frequently, and I do enjoy it, especially when it's like a ladies' night out. There's a lot of, ladies come out, moms, and, people who are just kind of want to laugh, and that feeling, that energy, that's always nice.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about too, was the ladies' night out program. So that's basically a comedy show.
It is, ladies. Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you add to the resume the fact that you're a playwright, and if you think if I think comedy is difficult, playwriting has got to be crazy difficult, just because you are not only telling a story, but you're having to place the people correctly on the stage. You have to have the right expressions on their face. You have to have the right dialogue, and all of that stuff has to work together. Tell me the first opportunity you had to do a playwriting, was that the Together We Laugh?
No, the first time I wrote a play, I was 12.
Oh, really?
And my church let me do it. I wrote it. I can still see where I was writing it in 7th grade in the cafeteria. I can still see myself there. And I wrote it. I took it to our pastor. He said yes. It encompassed the young people in the youth group, and it was a Friday or Saturday night, and the whole church came out and watched this. What I'm sure at this point was a ridiculous stage presentation because I was 12, but I did it. They let me do it, and so I've done that, since I was 12.
Wow. The one that's available to people to pick up, if they wanted to purchase and have it in their own library, would be the Together We Laugh, right? Yeah,
Together We Laugh was more of a, there were skits and stuff. Together We Laugh was less of like a stage play and more of, my grandmother, who was also a playwright, she was a wonderfully loving and caring and nurturing woman. She wasn't particularly funny, and she wasn't silly like I am, right? But there was something that made her laugh, and it was the Carol Burnett show. Something about the Carol Burnett show made my grandmother, it just tickled her. And I loved that when we won't watch that together, hearing her laugh. And so she had passed away a few years before I did that. And I wanted to just do this big kind of, that was the motto of it. So it was comedy, it was skits, it was musical numbers, it was all of that. And so it has the appearance of a stage play because there was so much that we had to do on stage, but it had more of the feel of like a variety show.
Variety show, okay, like a Carol Burnett show.
Yeah. Yes, that was definitely the motto I used. Completely ripped it off.
and that is available for someone to purchase. It's on your website, I know, and I think I even saw it. Did I see it on Amazon as well?
It is on Amazon as well. Yeah.
So then, and Brant just raved about the Bold and the Sanctified. He just said it was a masterpiece and brilliant. I think those are a couple of the words that he used. So tell us about that. The Bold and the Sanctified is a stage show, has not been recorded per se.
It has not. The plan is to record it in February of next year. And so not only record it, but also do it as a live streaming event. So that's scheduled to be at the end of February. But after Together We Laugh, it had such a great response. There was a producer in the audience, and he asked me would I consider putting a play up in the following September. And I said yes, but I had no idea what it would be about. I signed the papers and everything before I even had a word written. Sure, why not, sir? Absolutely. And then I was like, what in the world am I going to talk about? And there was so much racial stuff going on, which, obviously there still is and probably always will be. And I thought, could I do something that would speak to that in a funny, musical way that didn't beat people up, didn't put a lot of guilt or shame on people, but made people hopeful in what the gospel says about us being one. And from that thought process, the rest of it kind of unfolded.
And that is kind of the theme of it is race relations in the church, right? Basically. Yeah,
but I wanted it to have a real relational feel. So I had a character, a black pastor and a white pastor. And when I first wrote it, Rick, I just made like these two guys who had struggling churches, and they brought their churches together to make one church. And it just felt kind of like, it just rang empty to me. And so I scrapped that. I had written a lot too, and I scrapped that. And I made them friends from seminary.
Oh.
And they met back up. And so there was already an existing relationship for the audience to root for. And that just gave it such a wonderful feeling, because then when their wives didn't get along, their families, their congregations, you were kind of rooting for these two guys who were essentially best friends from college and were trying to make it work. But it shows the struggle and the inherent challenge of bringing cultures together. I didn't want to kind of gloss over that and say, no, we'll preach the gospel and everything will be just fine. That's not true, right? There are going to be struggles. There are going to be challenges. You can't live in this country and that not be the case. But if we all have a unifying love of Christ and an acknowledgement of his authority, then we get through those things, and it's beautiful, and it's a testament to the world that he is who he says he is. And so that's how I wanted it to roll out, and hopefully it did. And
it does have a happy ending?
You know what? I don't know. Hopefully. I think it is a hopeful ending. I don't think it's a happy ending, because there were things like, for instance, I don't want to give too much away, but the wives that were kind of bickering and just really could not stand each other, that never really resolves. So, and people didn't like that. People were like, well, why didn't you have them? Because that's not real life. Yeah. Real life is not, and now we're fine. That's not true. The next racial thing that happens in this country is going to hit Sherri different than it hits Rick. And Sherri and Rick may have to sit down and talk about why that hits me differently than it hits you, and how you see it and how I see it. We don't gloss over those things. We don't say we're going to church together now let's not talk about it. No, that's not true. That's not life, right? So it's not, I wouldn't call it a happy ending, but I would call it a hopeful ending. You leave there feeling like there is hope for this to work. That's I think, all that we could actually, for lack of better terminology, hope for. Yeah.
So, geez, I'm knocked into my microphone here.
That's okay.
Too much hand motions going on over there. So does that played live in Pittsburgh and some other cities too, right?
It did. We did it in Pittsburgh a couple times, and then we did it in, I think, Akron, Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So we've done it 4 or 5 times.
Yeah. And it starred, which is kind of exciting, it starred somebody that we all might know or appreciate, and that's Ruben Studdard from American Idol.
Yeah,
right?
I still kind of look at that footage and say, I can't believe that happened. It's one of those outer body experiences. When I was first putting the show up, oh gosh, I can't even remember what racial uprising we were dealing with at that time, but there were some, and you start to feel that pressure of, okay, everyone's coming here to find out how we fix it. And I was like, I don't know that I've provided that. And I was so nervous, because it was like, did you it's that artistic thing where you start thinking, did I spend 2.5 hours saying nothing? Or, so that was I can still remember that time of rewriting, editing, getting him scripts, him coming in. And I think, like, when we did the dress rehearsal and his first rehearsal there, I remember his face and how engaged he was. And shocked. Rick, I mean, he's an American Idol winner. I'm some little girl from Pittsburgh. Who cares that I wrote something? Like, I don't even know how you got here, really. So the fact that he was so engaged and enjoyed it so much, I could tell that through the process. I was like, okay, well, maybe I do have something here. But it was still kind of outer body experience. Yeah.
Is there, some hope that somewhere down the line it could go to Broadway and become a national kind of exposed play?
You know what? I don't know. I think we'll do it in February, and we'll record it and we'll stream it live to, we have so many people who want to see it. It's a huge play. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. There's so many actors. There's so many, like, that. It is just a massive thing. And so the idea of touring it would take quite a bit. But I thought, okay, I can at least, now people have learned and are accustomed to taking in entertainment via, live stream. That's something we know now, right? That's something we expect. So I thought, okay, well, at least I can do it live a couple times, record it, live stream it for all of the people across the country, podcast listeners and everything who want to see it and check it out. And then we'll see from there. But I just want it recorded. We have not been able to record it in a way that, like Together We Laugh, where it can be duplicated. So
now, can you will Ruben Studdard come back to do that live stream?
I don't know. The funny thing is that in Harrisburg, he could not do it. And so his replacement was Brant Hansen. And so
really? Wow.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen Brant Hansen singing Proud Mary or Ain't Too Proud to Beg or ABC by the Jacksons, all of those things is worth the price of admission. Dance moves and everything, Rick. It's really special.
Yeah. I was giving him a bad time because he somewhere in his resume, somewhere along the line, and it's very small somewhere, that he played in a Christian rock band.
Yeah.
Right up and he says, well, and he kind of laughed. He says, I'm not really a singer. And I said, well, I've heard some of these comedic songs that you do on the radio show, so I know you can still do that. But
he has a wonderful. Yeah, he has a wonderful voice. He's great at songwriting, and he was a great sport when we did it on stage. Because, like I said, there were dance moves and everything, and he fit the bill.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's touch on authorship. You wrote a book, which the title of it is a little bit in your face.
Go ahead, say it, Rick. I want to hear those words come out of your mouth.
The title of the book is "I Want to Punch You in the Face, But I Love Jesus."
Amen.
The subtitle is, it's a PMS companion book. So tell us about that. I have not read it. Normally I would read a book before I talk, but then it seemed to exclude me.
No, there's no exclusion at all. There's actually a whole chapter where I interview husbands and ask them, what their experience has been with their wives. I think I tell the story in the book that this is early in our history of the show. Brant asked me, did I have anything I want to talk about? And I was in full disclosure PMSing that day, and someone was doing something so annoying in that room, something very mundane, but your female listeners will understand that there's just certain times where that is irritating me. It would not irritate me any other time. It's irritating me now. And whatever was happening, he said, do you have anything to talk about? And I said, every 28 days, I want to kill people. And he said, okay. And he won specifically. And I said, not you right now, but we talked about it. And one of the reasons why I love working with him is because he is prolific, more than anyone I've ever seen. And I too am a fan of radio and entertainment overall. And so I am a fan of someone who can take something and make it work for an audience, right? Like a lot of people talk to just hear themselves talk or talk because they think they can talk or whatever the case may be. But he is very, very, very empathetic to the audience. And that's part of his popularity, in my mind, is he knows how to talk to people. He's not just talking to hear himself talk, right? And so he knew that he knows his audience is women. Most men would not have taken that on, Rick. They would have been like, okay, great, moving on. Yeah. But he understood that his audience is majority women, right? Yeah. Yes, this is a Christian network, but that doesn't mean Christian women have PMS too, right? So, so they may act like they don't, and we don't ever talk about it because, we just don't. But that doesn't mean it's not relatable, right? So he found a way to talk about that, right? And the phones just lit up, like they just would not stop ringing. And he called it a calendar issue. That's how he got around it. To say on a Christian network. God forbid we say PMS when your P1 has PMS, but we don't want to say that, so that's fine. So he just said calendar issue. And women just poured out, because where else can you talk about it as a woman? You can't. That's why I wrote the book. Because especially in Christian culture, we talk about all the things that are a result of it or a manifestation of it, but we don't talk about what physically is happening to you that is creating this, because from Brant's perspective, from a male perspective, he talked about what it feels like to be on the receiving end of that from a woman, right? Yeah. And I said to him, think about turning into the Hulk. Like, does that seem like fun for David Banner, right? Does he seem like, oh, this is nice, now I'm going to be a monster? No, like it's the worst thing ever, right? You're going to turn into it. You see yourself turning green. You can't necessarily control it because it's a physical thing. And then when he came back down from David Banner, from the Hulk to David Banner, what happens? Your clothes are all tattered, your hair's all over your head, you've demolished everything around you. That's how a lot of women feel, right? And again, I don't want to say you can't talk about it. You don't talk about it because, and I'm not making a judgment here or a statement here other than it's true, that a lot of discussions or pulpits are male dominated.
Yeah.
And so a man is not going to bring that up. But that is what we are going through the majority of our lives. And so I wrote the book that I needed when I was in my late teens and early 20s, because I didn't know how to reconcile this with Christianity. I didn't know how to reconcile, like I make the joke when I do comedy about it, is that I thought I was backsliding every 28 days. Like I didn't know how to, the things that were happening to me physically, mentally, emotionally, I didn't know how to jive that with my walk with Christ. And so that's what the book is. It's a small book. I meant for it to be a companion book. I meant for women to be able to read it literally every month and laugh every month and be encouraged every month, just like, a really good friend. And so to hear women say they do that, to hear, watch them buy it for their friends and their daughters. And it's just, it's been a blessing. Yeah. And
that too, available on your website as well. Is that it's on Amazon too? Because I did see it on Amazon as well. So,
and to be sure, I could not find a publisher to publish it, Rick, believe it or not.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, they loved it. And they love that, and in publishing, you have to have, a reach, you have to have a platform, as they call it. I have all of those things. You have to be able to write. I can do that fairly well. But to my point, this topic was something like, we can't talk about that. Okay, well, your readership, they're women. So that made me want to do it even more, because, you can't talk about it, which means it needs to be talked about. So Brant Hansen Publishing stepped up to the plate, and he put some money up, and we did it on our own. And it's been successful enough now, thankfully, that obviously publishers are now like, oh, well, maybe we should. Well, yeah, of course, that's what I was trying to tell you.
The website address, just so that we have that out, is
IamSherriLynn.com. So I am SherriLynn.com.
2 R's. I learned that along the way. 2 R's and
2 R's, 1 I. Yes.
And 2 N's.
Yes.
Well, cool. So now, what I always like to get to the heart of what our podcast is all about is, it sounds like, based on what you've already said, that Christianity was a part of your home right from the get-go, right? I mean, that was a part of your culture. Was there a time when Jesus became like real to you? I mean, you'd maybe gotten the doctrine and maybe gotten, the Bible verses and stuff like that, but that there was a relationship. Was there a magic moment that happened, or did it kind of evolve?
I think probably both. I was raised, I always say I was born on the pew. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher for 50-something years. My grandmother was a gospel singer and playwright and all of those things. And so I would say preaching in church is the family business. Yeah. And so I think I was probably preaching by 13, maybe. And I knew all the stuff, right? So it was in college, when I went to college, and I went completely off the rails, and that was almost immediately. So I don't know that I will ever really, I know that I didn't have a relationship with Christ, even though I had said the words and went through all the things. I didn't know who he was, because I don't think you can walk away from someone you have a relationship with that quickly, right? And so my personality is very excessive and obsessive and addictive and all of those things. And so immediately I found myself in the throes of all of that in college. And, you know, I'm a fun girl. And so you can kind of mask all of the stuff with partying and everybody wants to be around you and all of that. And I think around maybe early 20s, I started realizing, excuse me, I'm going to die. I really thought that because I didn't seem to have an off button. I didn't seem to have an ability to shut this off. Like it was just constant go, party, hang out, friends. I was just afraid of myself, honestly. And I think people who have that kind of nature understand what I'm saying. And I went to my uncle's house, who was a pastor, and I sat on his porch. He lived on Alcoa Drive in New Kensington, Pennsylvania. I sat on this porch and he said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, "I think I'm going to die. I'm going to die." I said, because I don't know how to manage life. I don't. And he said to me, "Come sit under the word. That's all you need. If you commit to sitting under God's word, his word will change you." And I said, "Okay." And I started going to his church, and he didn't command me to stop drinking or smoking weed or any other stuff I was doing. He just said, "Come sit under the word." And so that's why I said that was a moment, right? But then the process of Christ changing me and the Holy Spirit changing me is a process that is ongoing. And I'm grateful for it. And that's where I learned that whole process. I'm sure I changed, Rick, a lot slower than people wanted me to. But I found out something that I didn't know and I wasn't taught, which was that Christ was committed to the process of changing me, that it wasn't go change yourself and get yourself together and then come back to me. It was, we're in this together. And as long as you're humble and you end up back in my presence and you're coming boldly in my presence, we'll clean it up. Now, you're going to have to deal with your consequences, but we'll clean it up and we'll move on from that point. I didn't know that. And I don't know that a lot of us know that. That he's committed to the process of changing. And I'm so grateful for that time that I learned that.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that, because I think I do think people have the guilt trip that weighs them down, and then they don't understand that you're partnering with this man named Jesus, right?
Yes. So, yeah, and he's the one with the power, and we're the one with the humility.
Yeah.
I bring that to the table. He brings the power to the table. He will change me. If I try to take the power, and I have, that's when things go terribly awry very quickly.
Yeah. Well, so what about, hang on a second. What about the moments along the way that were the real challenges? Maybe doubt creeped in, or that you had prayers that you thought should be answered but weren't. Anything that jumps out at you in that regard through your life?
Yeah, you know what? I was working at a little gospel radio station. I was in the morning show. And then the afternoon guy at a Christian talk radio station across town, which was a huge station in Pittsburgh. He got fired. He was one of those kind of firebrand conservative talk guys, you know what I mean? And I remember why he got fired is because, I'm sorry to laugh about it, but it's when the Pope had died. I think it was like 2005 or something like that. And he had implied that perhaps the Pope had went to hell. And so then, then he was literally gone that day, right? And so they were looking for someone to fill in. And I sent my resume, or I don't know how I got over there, and they called me. And I went over there and I talked with the program director, and I'm like, okay, so I'm not white, I'm not a male, I probably lean conservative, just, at that time, whatever that meant. I said, but I'm not going to do politics ever. And I'm not going to argue with people, and I'm not going to hang up on people, and I'm not going to do all the stuff that he did. I'm not doing any of that. And he said, at that point, they were just scrambling. It was a terrible press fiasco. It was just awful, right? So they just needed somebody to come in there and kind of smooth it over. And so they gave me, the fill-in, and that's what I was. It wasn't my show, it was just filling in. And you're in radio, so you know how that is. You show up, you do your 3 hours. It was talk. I had never done talk before. And it worked. And people were responding to it. And I thought, hey, I got something here, right? Like it was becoming popular. But they would not commit to me. And they would bring in other people to audition and on the air, and I wouldn't go in that day, and then they'd bring me back.
Really? Wow.
I filled in, and you know how this is, Rick. Who would let someone fill in for like almost a year?
Without making some kind of commitment. Right?
Without making a commitment to the person. And so we can get into all the reasons why that wouldn't happen. There's no reason to do that because, to your point, I prayed, I begged God. Like I knew I was good at it. I knew they knew I was good at it, or you wouldn't keep having me come in. They would not commit to me, would not. They brought in someone, hired someone over me, and very unceremoniously, like I don't even know if I got a call. They just stopped calling me to fill in after I was filling in for almost a year. Man. And it was his show, and that's fine. He hated me because, again, it's, and this is without political commentary. This is just, think of the characters, if you would. This was having Rush Limbaugh on a show and then bringing in Oprah, right?
Yeah.
So everyone who likes Rush is probably not going to really care for Oprah, and everyone who likes Oprah really doesn't care for Rush, right? So when I came in, anyone who like the more Rush-like things left, and all the Oprah people came. Well, then they hired a Rush guy. So now all the Oprah people are mad, right? So it was just so much tension in the city. I didn't listen, but the guy would talk about me horribly on the air. And and then he quit because he couldn't take it. And they asked me back to fill in.
Wow.
And so I went back to fill in, and I filled in another several months until they decided to go with another show. I say all that to say this. I prayed and prayed and prayed and asked God for that, and I could not understand why he didn't give that to me. If he would have given that to me, Rick, at that time, there would be no Brant and Sherri Oddcast, Brant and Sherri, because I would have been content there in that market in Pittsburgh, which is wonderful, working at that radio station, and that would have been my thing. God had something else, and I couldn't see it. And that was 2005, 2006. I didn't join Brant till 2012. It took a minute.
Yeah.
But I do work for Cure International, as Brant does. And the station that I was filling in for all those years ago did a Cure drive, and I went back to do the Cure drive.
Oh, really?
And as I drove up and I got into the parking lot, it was early in the morning because it was the morning drive, and I just broke down and cried because I remember what it felt like to drive there every day, wondering why they wouldn't commit to me, wondering what I had to do to get this gig that I felt like I deserved.
Yeah.
And now I was driving there. I'm crying now.
We're supposed to not be revengeful at all, but a certain amount of that probably crept in. Like
it really wasn't. It was gratefulness. It was that, what, I get it now, God. I get it. And so now when the answer is wait now, it's not easy, but he has proven himself. So now I can see it and say, no, he has something else. And does that take 6 years to get here? I don't know. But I knew that feeling when I drove up into that parking lot, and it was one complete circle. It all came full circle. This is what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so that's a moment that always sits with me, that he didn't give me what I asked for. He gave me better.
Much better. Right. Yeah.
Much better.
Very cool. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I so much appreciate you now more than I have in the past, and I appreciated you a lot in the past because I think you're so fun and funny, and just a joy to listen to. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks for taking the time. Good luck with the play and
Absolutely.
the continued success of the Brant Hansen show.
Thank you.
And God bless you.
Thank you, Rick, for that. I never, ever, ever take it for granted when people want to talk and chat. I'm honored by it. So thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
And there you have it. Thank you for joining us on the Amazing Greats podcast. And thanks to our producer, Clem Daniels. Thanks to you for your likes and your shares and your subscribes. And we'll see you again on the Amazing Greats podcast. God bless you.